To the world, Bing Crosby was perfection, the smooth voice that soothed America through war and hardship. He was the man who sang White Christmas, the face of comfort, faith, and family. But the story behind that smile was anything but peaceful. Away from the spotlight, Crosby lived a life marked by obsession, silence, and control. His rise to fame built an empire, but it also built walls, between him and his wife, between him and his children, and between the legend and the man he truly was. Behind the songs that united millions was a father feared by his sons, a husband haunted by tragedy, and a star trapped in the image he created. This is the side of Bing Crosby the world was never meant to see. The rise of a legend. Bing Crosby was born Harry Lillis Crosby, Jr. on May 3, 1903, in Tacoma, Washington, the fourth of 7 children in a hard-working Catholic family. His father was a bookkeeper, his mother a music lover who filled the house with hymns and rhythm. At 6 years old, Bing discovered his first phonograph, and it changed everything. The boy who once dreamed of becoming a lawyer now spent hours listening to ragtime records, memorizing melodies, and imagining a world far beyond the Pacific Northwest. At Gonzaga University, Crosby studied law to please his family, but music consumed him. Nights were spent playing drums and singing at local clubs until finally the pull of the stage won. He dropped out and joined the Rhythm Boys, a jazz trio that electrified audiences with energy and humor. His voice stood out, smooth, relaxed, natural, unlike the powerful theatrical singers of the time. Radio soon discovered him, and so did Hollywood. By 1930, Bing appeared in King of Jazz, and his easy charm made him an instant favorite. Within a few years, he was everywhere. On the radio, in films, and on records that topped every chart. America fell in love with his casual delivery and his gift for turning any lyric into a story. But that success came at a cost. The constant work strained his voice. In 1931, after months of exhaustion and drinking, doctors warned him that he had a vocal cord nodule and could lose his ability to sing. Bing ignored the advice, kept performing, and paid the price. His voice changed forever, deeper, darker, and more emotional. Yet that new tone became his greatest weapon, transforming him into the voice of a generation. By the mid-1930s, he was unstoppable. His radio show drew 50 million listeners each week. He was earning more money than any other performer in America. Hollywood crowned him its most bankable star, and fans saw him as a symbol of hope during the Great Depression. But fame also brought an expectation he could never escape, to be perfect, polished, and pure. Behind the microphone, a quiet intensity was growing inside him. He wanted control over his career, his image, and soon over everyone closest to him. Love, marriage, and fire. In 1929, Bing Crosby was 26 and on the brink of stardom when he met Dixie Lee, a young actress at Fox Studios. She was beautiful, spirited, and already making a name for herself in Hollywood films like Fox Movie-Tone Follies of 1929. Their connection was instant. 2 rising stars swept up in the magic of early Hollywood. A year later, on September 29, 1930, they married. To the public, it looked like the perfect match, America's golden voice and a glamorous actress. Behind closed doors, however, their love story quickly became a struggle between fame, insecurity, and silence. Dixie soon gave up her promising career to focus on being a wife and mother, while Bing's career exploded. He became a fixture on the radio, in films, and on the charts, his life consumed by work. Dixie, left alone in their grand Toluca Lake estate, turned to alcohol to fill the emptiness. Their 4 sons, Gary, Lindsay, and twins Dennis and Philip, grew up in a household that was both privileged and deeply unstable. Bing was often away, and when he was home, his rigid discipline replaced warmth. Dixie's loneliness deepened into addiction, and the distance between them became irreversible. Then, tragedy struck. In January 1943, the family gathered to take down the Christmas decorations when a short circuit in the tree sparked a fire. Within minutes, flames engulfed their home. The family barely escaped, and Bing watched helplessly as the 4-acre estate and everything inside burned to ashes. 13 years of marriage went up in smoke. The fire destroyed priceless trophies, awards, and hundreds of his recordings. He later salvaged a single-charge shoe, inside which he found $2,000 in winnings, a dark symbol of survival in a year that nearly took everything. The fire was more than a loss of possessions. It marked the collapse of what little peace remained in their marriage. Dixie's drinking grew worse, and Bing withdrew further into work. To the world, he was still the cheerful crooner with the perfect family. But inside the walls of what was left of his home, his wife was drowning in despair, and his children were growing up afraid of the man the rest of America worshipped. The hidden darkness at home. By the mid-1940s, Bing Crosby was one of the most powerful entertainers in the world. His film, Going My Way, earned him an Academy Award, and White Christmas had become the best-selling song in history. To millions, he was the picture of warmth, a devoted husband, a model father, a beacon of morality. But those who lived under his roof knew a far different man. Bing ruled his household with the same precision he brought to his career. Discipline, order, and control were his laws. He feared that his sons would grow up spoiled by fame and fortune, so he enforced strict rules that bordered on cruelty. His eldest son, Gary, later revealed that Dad didn't want any Hollywood kids in his house, describing him as a man driven by fear disguised as morality. The boys were sent to boarding schools while Bing made films and radio appearances, and when they were home, every mistake had a price. Gary's 1983 memoir, Going My Own Way, shattered the myth of America's ideal family. He wrote of beatings with a metal-studded belt, harsh weigh-ins to control their bodies, and punishments that left both physical and emotional scars. His brother Lindsay confirmed the stories, saying their childhood was filled with terror and confusion. While Bing's second family would later deny the severity of these claims, even his daughter Mary admitted years later that he was not an affectionate father. At the same time, Dixie Lee's alcoholism worsened. Her days were spent behind closed doors, isolated and broken. Mary Crosby would later recall, "We'd come home and find her passed out on the floor." It was permanently scarring. Some experts believe that the twins, Dennis and Philip, were born with fetal alcohol syndrome, something neither parent understood at the time. All 4 sons would later struggle with alcoholism themselves, carrying their parents' pain into adulthood. To the public, the Crosbys were America's dream family. Smiling in photographs, gracing magazine covers, living in a house filled with laughter. But behind those closed doors was a cycle of silence, addiction, and fear. Bing's perfection on stage was built upon a foundation of personal chaos, and soon the darkness inside his family would consume them all. Death, regret, and revelation. By 1952, Bing Crosby was still one of the most recognizable men in America, adored by fans, respected by peers, and envied by his rivals. But at home, tragedy was closing in. His wife, Dixie Lee, just 40 years old, had been battling alcoholism for years. The strain of living in Bing's shadow, coupled with her own depression and isolation, had taken its toll. That summer, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Her doctors, perhaps fearing her fragility, decided not to tell her the illness was terminal. Bing agreed to the secrecy, a decision he would regret for the rest of his life. When Dixie's health began to fail, Bing left for Paris to film Little Boy Lost, a movie about, ironically, a widower who loses his wife in wartime. While he worked, Dixie's condition worsened. She died quietly in her home in California on November 1st, 1952, surrounded not by her husband, but by nurses. The woman who had once been his greatest love, and perhaps his greatest casualty, was gone. The funeral was a media circus. Cameras swarmed the grieving family, snapping photos of Bing's bowed head as reporters shouted questions. His son Gary later said, "It was a circus, a disgusting, painful circus." In public, Bing remained composed. In private, he was silent. "I will never talk about my grief at losing her," he once said. "Grief is the most private emotion a human being can have." But that silence spoke volumes. Her death devastated their children. Gary, already struggling with resentment toward his father, spiraled deeper into alcohol. Lindsay's depression intensified. Dennis and Philip, the twins, grew up searching for affection that never came. Dixie's absence left a hole no one could fill, not even Bing, who buried himself in work once again. Yet, in a strange way, Dixie's death also humanized him. The public saw a rare vulnerability, a man capable of breaking. But inside, he carried the weight of guilt. Guilt for leaving, guilt for silence, and guilt for the pain he could never undo. For the first time, Bing Crosby, the man who had everything, faced the truth that fame couldn't save the ones he loved. The fall of an idol. After Dixie's death, Bing Crosby threw himself back into work as if labor could bury loss. In 1953, he married actress Katharine Grant, a woman 30 years his junior who brought light and youth into his aging world. They would go on to have 3 children, and to the outside eye, Bing seemed reborn, smiling again, singing again, surrounded by a new family. But the ghosts of his past were never far behind. In public, he was still revered as the ultimate American gentleman. A devout Catholic, a family man, the singer who had comforted millions with White Christmas. In private, however, the cracks were widening. His 4 sons from his first marriage carried the trauma of their childhood into adulthood. Gary, the most outspoken, battled alcoholism and bitterness. Lindsay fought depression. Dennis and Philip both struggled to find purpose in a world that only saw them as the sons of Bing Crosby. The discipline that once defined their father now haunted their every decision. In 1983, 6 years after Bing's death, Gary released his memoir, Going My Own Way. And the Crosby myth collapsed overnight. He described his father as cold, violent, and emotionally unreachable. The stories were shocking. Punishments with a metal-studded belt, daily weigh-ins that led to humiliation, and years of fear disguised as discipline. "He taught us how to fear, not how to love," Gary wrote. Lindsay confirmed the abuse, calling their upbringing a life of terror. But the family divided. Philip and Bing's brother Bob publicly denounced Gary, calling him a liar chasing attention. Yet the damage was done. America's favorite crooner, the smiling priest from Going My Way, the gentle father figure of post-war dreams, was suddenly cast in a new light. The revelations ignited a debate that still lingers. Was Bing Crosby an abusive tyrant, or a strict man shaped by a harsher time? For his surviving children, the answer was complicated. Gary and Lindsay's lives ended tragically. Lindsay by suicide in 1989, Dennis in 1991, both consumed by the same pain that had once surrounded their mother. Bing's perfection, it seemed, had come at the cost of everyone who loved him. In 1983, 6 years after Bing's death, Gary released his memoir, Going My Own Way, and the Crosby myth collapsed overnight. He described his father as cold, violent, and emotionally unreachable. The stories were shocking. Punishments with a metal-studded belt, daily weigh-ins that led to humiliation, and years of fear disguised as discipline. "He taught us how to fear, not how to love," Gary wrote. Lindsay confirmed the abuse, calling their upbringing a life of terror. But the family divided. Philip and Bing's brother Bob publicly denounced Gary, calling him a liar chasing attention. Yet the damage was done. America's favorite crooner, the smiling priest from Going My Way, the gentle father figure of post-war dreams, was suddenly cast in a new light. The revelations ignited a debate that still lingers. Was Bing Crosby an abusive tyrant or a strict man shaped by a harsher time? For his surviving children, the answer was complicated. Gary and Lindsay's lives ended tragically, Lindsay by suicide in 1989, Dennis in 1991, both consumed by the same pain that had once surrounded their mother. Bing's perfection, it seemed, had come at the cost of everyone who loved him. Bing Crosby's voice defined an era, but his story reminds us how easily perfection can hide pain. Was he a loving father misunderstood by history, or a man whose pursuit of control destroyed the people he loved most? Even decades after his death, the debate continues. Maybe the truth lies somewhere in between, in the space between his music and his silence. What do you think? Can an artist's greatness ever outweigh the darkness behind it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories behind Hollywood's most complicated legends.